Hey guys, welcome back. This episode is a little impromptu. I just had a lot on my mind recently about the sports cards market, and I figured I would just kind of get it off my chest here in a quick video, just hopefully giving a little bit of insight and just some observations, I guess, from a collector slash investor like myself. I've been really kind of thinking about the thesis of, the sports card market and specifically kind of the investor side of the market, really kind of suffering from this herd mentality that I think, could ultimately become the single biggest issue that, the sports car market could face because it's going to cause, a lot of kind of ripple effects throughout the market and eventually, could lead to some very bad business practices and different problems that could arise because of it. Now, what I mean by herd mentality, it's pretty straightforward, which means that a large group of people within a certain segment kind of all follow each other in their different approaches to the hobby. And I guess this is kind of becoming, it's been kind of the way it has been for a while. This happens in a lot of different segments. I'm not just saying this is sports cars. This happens in any kind of collectible market where certain things become more popular. Usually there's justification and there's reasoning behind certain things, but sports cars have so much speculation attached to it because we're dealing with primarily with athletes and performance and so on and so forth. However, that's not always the case, and I'll state some examples of what that is later in this video. But I just kind of wanted to kind of start with, I guess, what a lot of people consider sort of the main figure in kind of becoming a influencer into the sports card hobby, whether or not you like him or not. Gary V, or Gary Vaynerchuk, has been a proponent of the hobby for many years now, for at least 2-3 years ballpark. He's honestly one of the first people I heard, within the kind of Twitter social media world, really pushing sports cards from a large, audience standpoint. And I think while it's good in a lot of senses, a lot of, traditional collectors got kind of put off by it in the very beginning because they thought that it was a pump and dump scheme or whatever you want to call it. However, since Gary does have so much influence, it definitely did cause a lot of herd mentality and a lot of influence on what people bought and who people, picked up. And it was more or less done with the sake of flipping because, if you look at Gary's core audience, they are primarily flippers. And they do this, as part of their, teachings from Gary, because he's very, very bullish on, doing things like, garage selling and, finding things for cheap and then selling them for more, or, the arbitrage of buying stuff from like Alibaba and then selling it on Amazon for, 4 or 5 times markup. So this is his core audience. So of course, these are the people that are going to be learning about sports cards, which therefore they come in primarily with an investor mentality. And there's totally nothing wrong with that. It's just, just calling, a spade of kind of who the Gary V audience is and kind of what they, are kind of looking for within their, journey into the hobby. So, with that, I think a lot of the kind of new people that came into the hobby over the last, year and a half are primarily, investors and flippers. So while, again, that does cause a lot of action within the hobby, it also causes a lot of herd mentality in the sense to where, you're kind of jumping from trend to trend to trend to trend to trend, which, it's one of those things where it's almost like you're artificially inflating something for your own benefit and gain, and then you're moving away, and then that thing is then gonna, come back down to reality. So pretty much all of 2020 is what you saw happen, basically, is it went from, micro trend to micro trend within the hobby. Started off it with, rookies and base cards and Prism and all that stuff. And we definitely saw that as the big trend, specifically within basketball. And then, then it started moving into other areas. We obviously saw the giant spike in soccer cards, which, was, something that became a herd that kind of moved into soccer, and it wasn't because people were passionate about soccer. It was because people saw this as an opportunity and they wanted to jump in and take advantage of this and invest and probably flip and then get out, right? That was the whole point. And then, moving on from Gary Vee, we then kind of saw influencer like Logan Paul, who comes in with tens of millions of followers on YouTube and so on and so forth, really kind of bring hype into the Pokemon arena. And you saw these exponential jumps in Pokemon, and not just the vintage kind of first edition, high end, really rare stuff, but in the modern Pokemon stuff, the stuff that you can just buy by the droves in any convenience store basically in town. So there was definitely an artificial kind of inflation of that market as well. That was kind of driven by a influential person, and the herd went over there. And, again, you didn't know anything about Pokemon, and you started picking up Pokemon because you're like, oh my gosh, everyone else is doing it and the prices are jumping up because everyone's buying it. So why not? And then recently, another kind of spike that we're kind of starting to see the very, beginning of is UFC. And, this happened, probably about a month, 2 months ago-ish. But really, there was obviously the Conor McGregor fight that happened. And that was, I think people kind of circled around that as the reason. But Conor's had fights, within the last, X amount of time. And cards did not spike during those fights. So to kind of say it was Conor McGregor's specific fight against Dustin Poirier isn't necessarily true, because we can look at the data and show that anytime there's a big UFC fight before this last one, it didn't really cause much movement in the UFC market. However, a pretty influential person within the sports card world put out a video specifically about UFC cards, probably a week or so before the fight. And then all of a sudden, Conor McGregor cards started booming and jumping out of their socks. So I guess what I'm getting at here is, following the herd is something that is natural, and it's definitely something that you will do maybe if you don't understand a certain aspect of a market. And I totally understand it, and I've done it myself. I've definitely jumped into Pokemon more than I even knew. And, I grabbed a couple of things and I got lucky. Luckily, I kind of stay on top of the trends, and I was able to get in the early-ish phase and was able to grab a few things and, and flip it. I don't have any personal connection to Pokemon. It's not part of my PC. I don't care very much at all, but, I saw it as an opportunity and I tried it out. But I guess what I'm getting at is, there's always going to be great opportunities out there, and there's always going to be a new shiny object that's going to pop up every single week or month, right? But really, the success isn't going to come from trying to follow the herd, because once the herd is there, it's there. There isn't going to be, you might find a little bit of action after the fact, but for the most part, once the herd gets there, your kind of chances of really doing well on this specific thing is pretty much gone. So what does that mean? Well, that means you got to kind of think for yourself, and that is where you're going to find true success. Now, I'm no master of this, game at all. I've, definitely have had some highs and some lows. I jumped into soccer at its peak and got my ass handed to me on one card specifically. I talked about it in a previous video. But what I did know, and what I'm sort of using as my thesis, proof in my thesis, is that when you collect what you love and what you know, you're going to find success. And I say that's true because when I first got in, and I probably started about 2 years ago, and this is, getting back in, I was, heavy into it when I was 10, 11, 12, the usual story that you hear from guys my age. But I got back in about 2 years ago and, was learning and was starting to try and figure out my way through this hobby. And I didn't have somebody to guide me. I didn't have a teacher or a mentor. I just kind of thought about, who do I like? What teams do I follow? What sports do I follow? Who do I believe in? And I go from there. So my early kind of investments was I am a Seattle native. So, of course, I start with Seattle players and teams because I'm a pretty religious Seahawks and Mariners, fan. So, first thing I did was bought some Russell Wilson rookie cards. And at the time I bought them, they were gosh darn cheap. And because I knew Russell Wilson so well, because I've been watching him for the last, 10 years, I just had a feeling that he was underrated. Everyone is hyper focused on Mahomes or on Brady and, and some of these other, young up and coming quarterbacks. But I was just like, I feel like Russell Wilson's underrated. He's my favorite quarterback. I know he's still got a lot of, years left in him because, he takes really good care of himself. He hasn't missed a game since he started. So very, checked all the right boxes. And so I invested into his rookie cards. And of course, what happened, right, in the 2020 season, he came out on fire. His cards 10x'd from where I was buying them. And what that shows is that by me just doing what I believe in and what I see with my own two eyes, instead of listening or following this herd that's just going to go like this from trend to trend, I was able to find success. Another example, UFC. I love UFC. I watch it religiously. I actually train in different martial arts, and I've done boxing and many different combat sports over the years. So I love UFC. I've watched it for years and years and years. And so when I learned of UFC cards, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So, of course, who did I buy early on? Conor McGregor. I bought him, his cards were dollars, like $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. Rookie cards, 2017, Topps Chrome cards. So all I'm saying is when you're trying to figure out what the next trend is, or you're trying to get ahead of the curve and invest in some things that maybe others haven't quite gotten to yet, don't just listen to these, YouTube creators or these Instagram posts, or, really think about who you are and what turns you on, what makes you happy, what players do you think are awesome? Are you really into golf? Well, you know what? You would run circles around me if I was buying golf cards. And I think there's a huge future in golf cards. I just personally don't know enough about golf to really feel confident that I could pick out the 2, 3, 4, 5 players that might have big upside, with all these new golf releases coming out this year from Upper Deck. I would love to know more, and I'm probably going to study some, but I'm still not going to have that advantage of somebody who truly loves the game, follows the game, has his favorite players, can rattle off stats, just like I was able to with Russell Wilson. And I think that's kind of where your mind needs to go if you really, really, truly want to find success in this. And hey, you know what? Your pick may not be hot in a week. It may not be hot in a month. It may not even be hot in a year. But if you believe in this person or this team or this sport or, this entertainment series or whatever it may be. If you think that Fortnite cards are going to be the right thing, and you can put together a thesis in your mind that says, you know what, I believe this because blah, 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 blah. And if you can say that to yourself and feel confident, I would recommend going for it. Buy what you know, buy what you love, invest in what you know, invest in what you love, collect what you know, and collect what you love. And I think the success will find you instead of you trying to find the success. All right, there you go. I had to get it off my mind. I hope this brought a little insight or maybe something to chew on. And I hope everyone out there has great success and makes $1 million bucks. But at the end of the day, we do this because it's a great hobby. And I know at the end, when all of the hype and the sizzle around the sports card market cools off a little bit, there's going to be some people left in it, and there's going to be a lot of people that leave. And I think that the people that are left are the ones that are continue to grow this hobby, and these are going to be the people that love the hobby and that truly find passion in what they do because they followed their heart and they didn't follow the herd. All right, we'll end it on that great little statement I just came up with. I will talk to you guys later, and good luck with all your collecting and investing out there. Peace.